So I was thinking I might do some reactions when I watch the Sandman Netflix show, but for some reason I couldn't really help starting to vent about the Why the Last Man show that came out about a year ago in my head whenever I was thinking about adaptations of like long, famous, beloved comic series. So I'm not going into Sandman fully unspoiled, and the impression I get is that they've made everything like a little bit less horror, which I don't really love. Just seeing pictures of some of the human characters, they've made everyone like young and shiny, which I don't like either. But it got me thinking about the Why the Last Man show, especially because I've been rereading Why the Last Man very slowly for a couple of years. And that show kind of had the opposite problem, that the comic is very light, even though it's about half the people in the world dying. It always kind of elides that a little bit and always still feels kind of fun. So for some reason in the TV show, they were like, let's just make another dystopian TV show. And like, there's some things in the comics that I'm sure I've mentioned on here before that are kind of like, I want to say didn't age well, but probably weren't a good idea at the time. Like, you know, if everyone with a Y chromosome dies, there would still be trans men, and so there would definitely still be people walking around who look like cis men, so it doesn't really make sense why the main character, is so worried that people will even see him. And like, the comic sort of vaguely addresses that, but doesn't really address it. Like, never really, like, kind of has to avoid ever showing a trans man character because they would end up having to admit that, like, uh, York doesn't look different from everybody else alive. Anyway, there's that. But I think, like, the big thing that I, like, recently have noticed in a reread is the sort of, like, ironic racism, I guess. Like, I think typically it's not a good idea for a white person to use the N-word as a joke, even if they're talking to their black friend, uh, who didn't seem to have a problem with it because they were also written by the same author who already decided the joke was okay. So anyway, I'm rereading it. I think it's really good. There's obviously a couple of things that kind of need to be addressed a little bit for the show. However, it kind of seemed like the show did this thing where they just like looked at Why the Last Man and they were like, oh my gosh, like some of the main characters are flawed, and the comic didn't adequately address that they like were flawed. So we have to just basically make them completely evil and pathetic in the show to show that we know that they're bad. So like, Hero will just be completely evil. We'll introduce a trans male character. Good, I agree with that. But for some reason, that guy will just be Hero's friend who she just like torments because she's evil. Yorick, instead of being a guy who is kind of in denial that his relationship isn't working out, will actually be dumped, which I think was like a horrible decision. It just makes his character, it just, like, it completely changes him from being somebody who kind of sucks, but like you can kind of like and relate to. Like, I think when I first read the comics, I was like Yorick's age, and I think I also didn't pick up on the fact that his relationship was about to end. And I can see somebody that age maybe not realizing that their relationship was about to end. And if half the people in the world died and you couldn't see your partner, you might still think, wow, this relationship was really great, and like I have to get back together with that person. That's very believable. And then when you're older and you're reading it, you can be like, oh, the relationship was about to end, but it's understandable why he didn't get that. For some reason in the show, they make it so Beth just like actively breaks up with Yorick, but he's just in denial. And then just like after the plague happens, he just decides that they're going to get back together. Like, I wonder if there was even an impression that like she'll have to get back together with him because he's the last man, which just makes him seem like an asshole. Um, on to the things I do like about the show. Like, I really was excited about like all of the casting, especially Ashley Romans as 355. I think most people who watched the show had the same reaction, that she was just like perfect in that role. I really like the new Amber Tamblyn Republican character, but mostly like all the new characters, I was kind of like, it's just like, it felt like the same thing where it seemed like the people who were adapting the show were in some way embarrassed by the original show or felt the need to apologize, like, you know, oh no, the show like is too focused on like a man, so we have to like make him like not the main character, barely even a character in the show, to like apologize for the the existence of this character by making all these like new female characters, or like focus on all the female characters much more. Instead of just having like a character that you can root for but kind of sucks, like you have to like make him just like such a pathetic and like unlikable character that you just like loathe him. So yeah, I actually didn't even finish the show, so I'm sure if anyone does like the show, they probably would find this an annoying review, and it's kind of off the cuff, but I wanted to do it because like suddenly, as I was rereading the comic and thinking about what I'm going to think of the Sandman adaptation, all these feelings started to roil inside me again. Like, it's just kind of frustrating because we were waiting for Why the Last Man adaptation for years and years and kept getting faked out with all these different castings and projects. And then, like, I don't know, there's just something about the experience of like waiting so long for an adaptation of something that you like, and then like when it finally comes, it is just like, definitely had some good points, but like fundamentally, like in terms of just like what it's trying to be, is just like so disappointing that it's just like not enjoyable if you liked the original thing, at least in my opinion. So yeah, it was canceled after the first season, and maybe it's for the best I didn't like it, because if something came out that like I thought was actually like a good adaptation, I would have been so bummed. But it was not. So it was just like, there's something about the fact if you wait for so long and then this thing finally comes out, it's like, now they're gonna be like, oh, I guess like a Why the Last Man adaptation isn't gonna be good. And it's like, no, but like this just wasn't good. Like when you think about all the resources that go into making something, and it's like, wait, but then like why did you change like the entire tone of the thing from what it was? So, yeah, I hope to discuss Sandman soon, and I hope I don't feel similarly about that, because it's been even, what, 10 or 15 years longer in this situation of like people constantly wanting it to be adapted and it not being able to be adapted, and now finally being adapted. So, yeah, I hope it's not equally a disappointment.